It is the Anfield Wrap after Liverpool decimated Newcastle United by 4-2. I've got Rob Gutmann, Neil Jones and Josh Williams. Andy Heaton is producing. Ash O'Rourke is looking after the images for you as well. We are brought to you in association with Green King, where the festive season continues. And I agree with them. As far as I'm concerned, it ends the 6th of January. That is the 12th day of Christmas. But also in my head, in a footballing sense, it ends when the third round of the FA Cup games go ahead. So you want to get yourself down to your local Green King establishment, meet up with friends and enjoy what will be an array of festive football. It actually starts on Thursday night. You've got to keep your eye on it. It's frisky. Crystal Palace play Everton on Thursday night. Two exhausted sets of lads running at each other there for 90 minutes at your local Green King establishment. Do enjoy it and do check out their Instagram as well. And you'll also find additional Anfield Wrap content. And we did the John Barnes thing with them as well. It was a pleasure to do so. So it is the end of the festive period with Green King. The gifts just kept coming though from a Liverpool point of view. I tell you what, that smooth podcasting there, Neil. Wonderful work. Neil Jones. Side should not be flattered by conceding 4, and yet this is where we are. It was some performance from a Liverpool point of view. I want to spend the first part of this show almost trying to contextualise it amongst Klopp Liverpool performances, amongst Liverpool performances that you've seen down the years. It was amongst the very best I've ever seen Liverpool attack.
Yeah, it was right up there. Yeah, definitely by a distance the best they've played this season. I think you can't argue that. I mean, the numbers tell you everything, but just the eyes told you it as well. It was sort of, I was in the give a lift to a pal of mine. He's usually a pessimist, and I said, "What do you think tonight?" He said, "I've had a 5 on 5-0 and a 5 on 6-0."
Wow!
I said, "What the hell?" I said, "New year, new you." And he said, "Well, no." He said, "I just think we'll have too much for them. We'll just run all over them." And at half time, it's 0-0, and I saw him in the press room and said, "I tell you what, you should be quids in here." And he said, "It's just the finishing was all it was missing." But it was a 5-0, 6-0 game. I thought, in terms of the way it panned out, Liverpool just. I saw there was a stat, and obviously, I'm sure Josh will have seen this, but everyone but Joe Gomez and McAllister had a shot, outfield players, and everyone but Van Dijk, and apparently McAllister didn't create a chance, but McAllister obviously did create a chance. So you talk about collective team performance. Don't get any bigger than that. I think 3 players had more than 1.5 XG personal. Jones, Salah and Nunez. You think, Newcastle are lucky to get out of Dodge with no damage, no further damage to the goal difference.
It's genuinely, it's solely the scoreline, Rob, that stops it from being hailed as one of the all-time great Anfield performances. If it had been, as Neil had said, a 5-0, 6-0, for me it was in the territory of Liverpool 5, Nottingham Forest 0. That's not an exaggeration. The genuine greats in terms of Liverpool performances, they were that good.
Do you know what? I hadn't viewed it like that specifically coming out of the ground last night because of the jeopardy throughout the game. It was genuinely a strange game. At all junctures I was sort of saying to my boys, my friend either side of me, we're playing really, really well here, aren't we? But at every step, but so many turns, the game wasn't going the way we wanted it to, and you almost can't absorb or take that into account. As I thought about it, and I watched the goals back afterwards, I thought, geez, Christ, we've walked the ball into the net 3 times, and we probably had another couple which were ruled out, and we had the penalty was a walk into the net job. It was special when you sort of see the XG at what it was, and you think something unusual happened there. I do think, I'm not saying performance means being coming in, but it has in the sense that I think we've played really, really well lately and also not really got our fullest reward. I think we were really good at Burnley, and it could have been 4-0 at half-time there, and we'd have gone, that's our best away of the season. I mean, I think against West Ham, it's now already an underrated performance, that 5-1. I thought we were absolutely sensational that night. And you could see the green shoots of it, ironically, against Man U in the bad 0-0. The first 10 minutes, the way we came, I felt we've got back in the last month that vibe around of a real Klopp Liverpool team, a team that is just what did Arteta describe it? The washing machine team, the team but also it's not just the pace, power, and aggression. It's the one-touch football is coming back. The coordination, the choreography is coming back. That did seem to. I'd say it's not come together yet because it's a game we haven't got won until about 80 minutes. Really, in truth, we're in danger. But yeah, in some ways, it's as good as anything you've seen.
You mentioned the Burnley game, and you mentioned this one. One of the things that strikes me is that from both the Burnley game and this one, Rob, Liverpool have won both matches, and I'm going away saying their best player was the goalkeeper. And I think that's, again, the Liverpool-Nottingham Forest comparison is that some people that night said that man of the match was Steve Sutton.
Yeah.
And that, Stuart Pearce said on TalkSport Dubravka was man of the match. And I think that's difficult to argue with in a number of ways, that he genuinely does, in the same way that James Trafford at Burnley I thought was excellent. They genuinely do keep the scoreline out under control because of how good Liverpool are.
Yeah, I felt watching it that they had 4 or 5 keepers in a certain sense, because everyone's putting their body on the line. He makes an enormous amount of saves and he does an incredible job. I don't think he's making many where you could pick 2, 3 and go, those are the saves, 2 of the saves of the season. There's none where he's flung himself, where he's done a Gordon Banks stuff, but his reactions.
There's a great save from across that comes in Nunez. Yeah, that's a great save.
The one where it's close in.
Yeah.
No, I mean, they are good saves. But again, watching back some of the chances we have, the bodies that get thrown on the line in front of him, I think happens to Curtis Jones a couple of times. You go, how many keepers do they need? They're defending deep and they're defending desperately. And his is one of those legendary great goalkeeping performances at Anfield that really say more about us than about them.
It does say more about us than about them. The other thing that I think Liverpool do, Josh, in the early going in the match is they work them. And this is a Newcastle side where it's much discussed the injury issues they've had over the course of the campaign. Just in general, to the eye, when you've caught them in the last month, you've gone, they look knackered. And I think what Liverpool do for the first hour, even though I would like more goals because they deserve them, is they say to Newcastle, this is the hardest work you're ever going to have to do in your life. And they work them and work them and work them, all areas of the pitch, and they grind them into the ground.
Yeah, and I think if you look at Newcastle since Eddie Howe, really, that's one of their biggest traits has been their intensity. And we just completely outworked them from the off. From the first whistle, the counter press was spot on. They couldn't get out their own half. I think the first time they got out their own half, Gary Neville dived on it immediately and said, they're coming into the game. When it was just not the case. It was just a case of them actually being able to get away from their own goal a little bit. And yeah, I think if I weren't booked on this show a couple of weeks in advance, I'd have been on the phone to you last night saying, get me on this one, because the XG on this is ridiculous, isn't it?
It's obscene.
I think we need to address it immediately.
Was it 7.5 or 7.2?
It was 7.27 on Opta.
Yeah, that's what I saw last night.
StatsBomb's got it about 6.7.
I saw XG on Infograph, I did 7.5 something.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
Yeah, I can't stress enough how outrageous that is. That is outrageous, mate. Every now and then you'll see a freak where there's someone posts a 5 every now and then, right? But to post a 7 is daft, mate.
Will there be a team that's probably got that for the season?
No, not for the season. I did look into this. I did do some digging, right? It's 25% of Man United's total for the season. For the entire season, that played 20 games, we did it in one game. And I looked back to 2017-18, that's as far back as I went. So the Salah's first season. And since then, Europe's big 5 leagues, the highest in that whole period of time is 5.9. That was done twice, once by Liverpool, funnily enough, against Leeds, and once by City against Watford. There was a few Bayern Munich games in there. So 5.9 is the highest. Liverpool go and post 7.2. That's just off the scale, mate. Off the scale.
I mean, it is. It's broke the StatsBomb graph. StatsBomb have the race chart at 6.64. The race chart works a little different to the cumulative XG, i.e. if there's a rebound in the same incident, it doesn't want to overcount it. So it's got it at 6.64, but it breaks the graph. It makes the whole graph thing look like, what on earth? It also ends up saying, and this is why, and I take Rob's point, I understand why there was some concerns in the ground, and my chimp at times, Josh, was a little bit out, but it ends up saying that literally on the numbers, where the numbers end up, StatsBomb always does a thing on the race chart where it says what likelihood is a home win, a draw, and a away win. It is the first time I've ever seen home 100%. 100% home, 0% draw, 0% away. And all I was thinking whilst I was watching it, Josh, is if they just keep going, the ball will go in.
Yeah.
Genuinely, it was a real, for me, it was a real reversion to the numbers. You cannot keep doing this. At half time, they go in at sort of 2.5 expected goals and it's 0-0. And Newcastle have only had one shot early in the game.
That was on the 8th minute, I think.
Yeah, they've had nothing else. And I was just watching it. I was almost watching it a bit with the numbers in mind. I was just going, you can't, if you just keep doing this, the ball will go in. And that's what happens.
Well, I tweeted exactly that, mate, at half time. At half time, everyone was going on about referees and that. Everyone was putting a lot of attention on the referee and things like that, and the finishing. And Nunez was getting a bit of criticism and stuff like that. And I just felt very listen, ignore all that. Ignore the noise. do exactly the same again, and I'll be amazed if we don't come away with a win, because at half time we posted 18 shots, so we're on course for 36 by 90 minutes. If you post 36 shots, mate, you win in the game, you know, most of the time at least. And they weren't like pot shots either, like they were against Man United. These were in the box. So
one was a pen.
yeah, it's unbelievable attacking performance, as you said. I couldn't agree more with everything you've said, to be honest.
I'll come back to you on it, Josh, about those numbers and about the sort of the way that the whole structure worked. They absolutely hounded them, and that's where they were getting the opportunities from. They left Newcastle I thought Newcastle's shape was, they were trying to be solid. He picks Joe Linton wide left in attack because he's thinking he wants to have a sub, attacking wise with Almiron. He also that was his concession to, we're going to Anfield and it's going to be a little bit difficult. That's what they did at the time last season, more often than not with Willock behind. And he hasn't got Willock, to be fair. And I think that is the only one I think of what I think is his first 11 he's got missing. Maybe he'd say Tonali, but we haven't seen enough. The rest of them are there, they're all knackered. Trippier, yeah, he just said Trippier as well. And the goalkeeper, to be fair. So I've named 3 now. Yeah, but
how many do we have out there?
Well, exactly, and that's where you can end up. But with it, Josh, I just thought those Newcastle players at no point did any of them settle into the game. And for me, that was the defining factor. Not one of them got to have an easy 5. Not one of them got 5 minutes of going, I know where I am on this pitch. They did not know where they were on the pitch.
No, I must say I was really surprised with their approach to the game. I thought Eddie Howe specifically in his pre-match press conference talked about like he'd watched the Arsenal game, he'd watched the Man United game, and the Man United game in particular made me think, you know, they're on the back of a few bad results. They're going to sit 10 behind the ball and they're going to break through Anthony Gordon and Isaac probably. But they just didn't, and they tried to build, even from the first whistle, he tried to build from the goalkeeper. I thought it just worked massively against them. I thought that they'd be really difficult to break down. I thought with us not having a left back, I thought we'd struggle for width, and I thought we'd have a bit of a problem with that. But they were just wide open. They were just really bad. It's one of them where I don't know how much of this... Well, I do. I think it was mostly Liverpool, but I don't know how much of it was like just Newcastle being bad. I think we said this after the West Ham game a couple of weeks ago in the Carabao Cup. West Ham looked awful, and it made Liverpool look really good. But I think this one was just Liverpool being brilliant, but also Newcastle just being... the approach and everything was just miles off, I felt.
Yeah, but... This is, again, you see that question, are they bad, are we good? I just think we're rattling teams properly in early old school Klopp style, as we said earlier. They just couldn't settle. You can low block all you like, but if a team comes at you with that kind of energy, that kind of counter press, I don't think if you don't ride that storm, you know, you've got 2 approaches. You ride it, you compose yourselves, you say, okay, they can't do this all night, or you shit your pants, and that's what Newcastle decided to do. Our intensity was so great in that opening 3 or 4 minutes, as it was against United, by the way, that I worried that we might blow ourselves out. And when we hadn't scored on minute 7, I was, you know, crying it in to my mate next to me, if you don't score, you know what happens. But we were able to sustain it. I don't know what's happened, the change has been, but in the last month, the counter-pressing has gone up a level. There's something has clicked with them. I think Szoboszlai, some of his work on the ball was weird at times, but his pressing, his energy, his work rate was just stunning. He was the lead figure for me in that opening phase. Incredible.
Yeah, Klopp picked out Curtis, didn't he, after the game, and said, he said a little dig about, I'm guessing it's the Daily Mail, because he sort of said, I get a lot of criticism for my behaviour against grassroots, or the example it sets to grassroots football teams. He said, well, if grassroots football teams want to watch that video, that's a lesson for them all in counter pressing, which I thought was just a weird bit of shade thrown at the grassroots community. But
all their own way for too long.
But I knew what he said, and do you know what? Do you know what made me notice it the most? How well Liverpool had played was when Gravenberch came on, and there was a couple of moments where either the ball was played behind them or he'd give the ball away, and you could just see that it was only a split second that he just sort of went, oh. And he didn't run after the ball, and it showed so much because the whole game, every single player, you know, they didn't get everything right. So obviously, give a couple away. I think Diaz gave one, but he had to play Curtis in. Yeah. He rolled it behind him. But the reaction every single time was spot on. I agree with Rob in terms of Szoboszlai, but I thought Curtis and Endo in particular, I thought the sort of way that they put the chokehold on, sort of anchoring high up the pitch and made sure that, you know, Newcastle must have felt like they couldn't get out of their own half. I think that's been the biggest change I've seen. I think a lot of it comes back to Endo, actually. I think he's really sort of settled into that position of, I know where I need to be. I know sort of how to support players, whether they've got the ball, I've got the ball, or the other team have. He just seems to have a real good positional sense about him. I think he's made a big difference, and sadly, we're going to be without him now.
Do you think it's a coincidence? There's no coincidence. Our two best performances this season is West Ham, I think, and Newcastle now. Same midfield, wasn't it?
Yeah.
With exactly the same midfield.
I mean, Curtis, he's gone up a level last calendar year, absolutely. But you look at him now and you watch him and you think, you could have asked me 5 years ago what type of player will Curtis Jones be at 22. This has been the last thing I would have picked. This sort of proper system player, all round reliable, consistent performer. I'd have said he'd be a sort of a 1 in 4 player who's got moments of absolute magic but drifts in and out of games. He's at the moment, the level he's reaching is massive, and I think he's absolutely. Listen, if Liverpool have got title decided tomorrow, League Cup final, FA Cup final, Europa League final, he's right in there straight away.
What's his goals per minute looking like since he's come? Because he plays 10 or 11 of the last 11 games of last season. I think he gets 3, 4 maybe.
4, yeah.
4. And he's got 3 with in a season where he's had interrupted with injuries and things like that. I think his goals per minute from that point to this point must be pretty high from a central midfielder.
For a Liverpool centre midfielder,
I think
under Klopp.
Definitely for a Liverpool.
I think the best thing is the type of goals though as well. He's not scoring screamers. He's not scoring sort of goals where you go, well, you won't score them every week. He's getting tapped.
Yeah, they're like Gundogan goals, aren't they?
Back post, arriving and putting them in, and get like both feet. He just looks like, and that must come from confidence. He's always had incredible belief in his ability, but I think the confidence in his role in the team and knowing it. And I think also, I don't think it's coincidence that you hear Jürgen mention these things. I think there is a little bit of massaging him and saying, come on, you can be our boy and show everyone else the ropes. And I think he relishes that. I've heard him speak a couple of times about, I'm not a kid who normally used to press, but I love doing it now and things like that. I think there is an element of like sort of convincing him that you can be this kind of tactical leader in the team.
There is, in amongst it all, the other thing that they do, Rob, is they allow no hard luck stories. My one concern in terms of the game was there was a slight reminiscence of the game around the same time of the year away at Leicester 2 seasons ago, where Salah misses the penalty. Liverpool absolutely batter them for a half. Salah misses a penalty, misses the rebound. They go in half-time 0-0, and there's a sting in the tail, and they never recover. What I loved was the resilience of them. There was no hard luck stories. The referee being hard work, they didn't let that get to them in the end. They just rode on and kept going and knew the reward would be there.
Yeah, and that has been a theme of this season, hasn't it? Really, since the get-go. I mean, maybe we were schooled. Maybe last season. Maybe if we go on to be successful, we may look upon the much despised season we had last season as a learning curve, because we certainly had to learn how to play in adversity. Then we were behind in so many games. This team is now its muscle memory is how to deal with that kind of position. You need things haven't gone your way. You need to score the next goal. But yeah, that was incredible last night. As I said, we were saying at the beginning, that's why it was a confusing thing to know how you felt about it at the final whistle. Was it like the Forest game, whatever? Because we'd had to deal with so much adversity. But it's happening time and time again. You're just hoping to pray it can keep us in the stead it's kept us in.
I think part of that, Josh, is the manager's use of the subs and the idea that the players themselves know the substitutions are coming. And I mean that as a massive positive, because some of those players include the ones who are going to be taken off, but they know first and foremost I'm likely to be taken off, so I need to do 90 minutes running in 60. That's what I'm going to do here for the team. But also, nothing's dead, nothing's finished, because we can change it. There's always about to be a change, and for me, that's the great liberation of Liverpool having the five attacking options that they've got, plus Harvey Elliott, plus Gravenberch, is that there is this sort of feeling of it'll be all right in the end, even if it isn't all right now. And I think that's part of how they're able to play in these difficult circumstances. They know it's about to get better if it needs to.
I felt a bit uncomfortable actually when they were making the subs, because I felt we were playing so well at that point. I feel like we could have only got worse, in my opinion. So, apart from Jota, who I think is the ultimate to bring on when you need a goal, other than that, I was a bit like, we could get worse here. And then there was a few Gakpo moments,
for 5 minutes,
moments. Yeah, for 5 minutes I think it was a little bit shaky, weren't it? But at the start of the game, to be fair, I looked at the bench and I think it's one of our strongest benches of the season, possibly. We got McAllister, Jota, Gakpo. These are seasoned internationals even Kwanzaa. You look at
Gravenberch, Elliott, Kwanzaa.
Yeah, serious bench that, mate. And I think in comparison to our title rivals, specifically maybe Arsenal lately, I think Arsenal just haven't got that. I think if the game's not going as Arsenal wanted to after 65 minutes, they just can't change it like Liverpool can, and I think it's stinging them a bit.
Do you think that though is that they haven't got the players, or that the manager hasn't got them players in rhythm. I think Klopp's the best around that. At sort of, you never feel like a player hasn't had a game for months where you go, oh God, we just brought him out of nowhere. It almost feels like, yeah, he played last week. Whereas Arteta or City sometimes, they bring on a player and you go, I forgot they had him. Like Reece Nelson come on at the weekend and you're like, oh, when was the last time I saw Reece Nelson? Never starts a game. He's always a sub. I think Jurgen's brilliant at making sure that, you don't ever feel like you're not in his plans almost, you just break glass. You're always there, ready to come on. It's made such a difference this season.
This is the most, I think, homogenous squad Klopp's had in terms of, we've said this before, you could go back 3 years and go, there is a clear best 11 here with the next 2 or 3 who could slot in and you wouldn't see much change. But beyond the 14-15, you are going to have to bring in a Origi. Or a Simicast would be that level now, I'd say. Now I looked across the squad and I think I counted, if you just count Alisson, 19 players who I thought broadly interchangeable. Yes, you're still going to say you don't want to lose a Trent or a Salah or a Van Dijk. But you could pick 19. And I think Klopp knows that and he's committed to playing them. As you say, there is... So who knows what our midfield is? I mean, we just identified this midfield's done really well, but who's to say what our best midfield is? And I think in a way Klopp is the one who was the most sort of vocally enthusiastic about the 5 sub rule when it came in during COVID, wasn't he? And I think he's the one who actually has been the smartest in using it. I think Jurgen Klopp is redefining how you use substitutes in a way that I don't think anyone has since Alex Ferguson realised putting 2 great forwards on 60 minutes really gives you a strong chance of making a football match go your way. And for the first time, I think Klopp may have moved ahead of Guardiola in understanding the direction of the way the game's going. And I do wonder if we're going to see him as we're coming into a transfer window as well. Klopp living with bigger squads, realising it's not just a nice thing to have options off a bench, it's an essential to have options off a bench.
Yeah, you talk about that midfield there, you say that's the best 2 performances of the season, but McAllister wasn't there.
No.
And McAllister's played pretty much every game when he's fit, hasn't he? And, does that unlock another level of him? You've still got, obviously, Thiago and Bajcetic, this mythical promised return of them one day. Yeah, exactly, yeah. You've still got them on the horizon. I think the best is clearly still to come from Gravenberch. I think he's got a lot to learn in terms of, I think you can see both why Bayern Munich wanted to sign him, but I can also see why he might have done Bayern Munich's head in a little bit because he's in moments rather than games. I think he's the same age or not far off, but he's a bit where Curtis was at times in the past, where it's like, but he won't do it next week, or he won't do it in the second half when he has a good first half. He's still got that to learn. Soboslai, obviously, I think he's had a really good first half of the season, but I still think he's got to put it all together going forward. He's got to show that he is what we saw certainly in the autumn. So there's real options there, and I think Rob's right. I'm saying there if we had a final tomorrow, but even if there was a final tomorrow, I'd have at least 3 decisions to make. I'd be thinking about my centre back. Let's assume everyone was fit. So Matip. I'd be thinking about my centre back. I'd be thinking about my front 3, and I'd be thinking about my third midfielder. I'd be thinking, well, what would I pick? So that hasn't been the case really, has it? When Liverpool have had, the great Liverpool team of recent, you've had 10 of them really, haven't you? It's only I can't even think. It probably would have been where you put Milner in, or if you put Milner in, isn't it? It's not really. There's not really that kind of dilemma around the starting 11. There's lots of them at the moment.
Yeah, I think Arsenal feel a little bit more original Liverpool in terms of having a fixed 11 that are starting every week, and then
very reliant on certain players.
Yeah, there's a bit of a drop beyond that, and I think you're spot on as well with the rhythm thing. I think Klopp's the best at doing that, and I think maybe if there's one player, we're being picky, who looks like he is a bit out of rhythm, it probably is Gravenberch. I think a few years back when he came to Anfield and played for Ajax, when he's at his best, Gravenberch, he's completely on autopilot and he's just doing everything on automatic. He's not even thinking, not hesitating, and everything's just going for him. He's almost in that flow. I think at the minute, he doesn't look like he's in that flow at the minute. He looks like he's still kind of getting to grips with things, yeah, and it looks like a mistake still really bothers him, and he needs to kind of move past that, because I think if Szoboszlai makes a mistake, he seems to move past it really quickly. Szoboszlai just kind of, same with Trent, just attempts something again 5 seconds later. Gravenberch seems to, his head drops a little bit and he remembers, I've got a counter press, and so I think he's still a work in progress.
Yeah. But sorry, I was going to say, Rob, just what has changed definitely with Liverpool this season is ball carriers in the team. Yeah. So many, and Gravenberch's one of them very much so, is that you almost feel like if all else, is going a little bit wrong in terms of we're not quite getting into the right areas down the flanks, or we're not hitting the target or whatever, you can give it to 4 or 5 players on the pitch, and they can take the ball 20 yards up the pitch, and that was not the case at all last season, was it? It was the opposite, really. It was going backwards, or you were at risk of being legged, to use a better phrase. But Liverpool have got a lot of players that I think would be very hard to play against in 5-a-side.
Yeah, it feels like we've got a lot of like the Oxlade-Chamberlain option from a few years back. Do you remember Ox against like City?
Best.
He'd be that kind of vehicle, wouldn't he, from the midfield to the attacking line.
What Keita could have been as well, at times.
Yeah, but it feels like we've got a few now who are similar to Ox in terms of being able to carry the ball over large distances.
I thought it was interesting in defence of Gravenberch, actually, after the United game. I think Gravenberch goes off with a sort of an injury that isn't an injury. But Klopp makes a point after, he says, having to take him off changed the game. He felt we got worse after he had to take Gravenberch off. So just an interesting one in how high he regards the player still.
Yeah, he's brand new and he's not played much football. He's learning rhythm, isn't he?
For me, it's simply a rhythm issue.
Let's do an old style rave about them, Neil. Front to back. Not pull any punches. Let's go through almost a lot of them. Start off with Mo Salah. He misses a penalty there first half. He gets one in the second. But in general, I thought his all-round game was astonishing. I've been sort of half waiting for him to absolutely put Dan Burn on toast in these fixtures. And it was as though yesterday he really got some quality sourdough from the shop. He thought it through. He absolutely knew he had him from minute one.
Do you know what? I listened to Dan Burn on Ben Foster's podcast recently. Sorry, I do listen to other podcasts.
That's allowed. Some do exist.
Yeah,
I go to bars that aren't Rob's.
And he was talking about the players that he faces, and he was asked about it. And I had a little chuckle to myself because he said, you get a lot of these right-sided players with the left foot who come in. He said, and the one, and I was just expecting him to say, the one that just kills me every time is Saka. And I thought, you cheeky. I was like, you're going to pay. We've got you in a couple of weeks. And yeah, of course. My brother-in-law, Madley, every single game, I'll have a discussion about him, and he'll never say I have anything positive to say about Salah. All he ever says is, I just think he could do more. And I was thinking yesterday in the first half, I was thinking, he's probably a 5 out of 10 in that first half. He's a bit scruffy, missed the pen, blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, you come off and go, he couldn't have done more there. He couldn't, apart from put the other penalty in, that's all he could have done. He's the pass for Jota for the second goal is outrageous, and he's been doing it all season. The pass for Gakpo's goal is even better, and he seems to have added that kind of. I do think he gets into little phases, Salah, where he's almost like, I'm going to try something.
I'll learn something.
I'm going to step over in the first half, and I said that must be a New Year's resolution. I've never seen Salah do a step over, even changing his boots and things. It's just like he's like, you know what? I'm a bit bored. I'm just going to try different stuff this season and see what happens. And yeah, it's just. I don't like being too nice about him because they're going to be without him for a few weeks. We're probably going to have conversations about how much they miss him. But he is a joke, isn't he? He just the things he does is just sort of. It's every single game he'll do 2 or 3 things in the game where you go, that's outrageous. That and it's not always a goal, it's not always an assist, but more often than not it is.
Yeah, this is his best season in the last 3 for me. To be getting better, I think. I mean, it's almost like him and Van Dijk sat down at the beginning of the season, had a little coffee, and went, "Should we get better?" And I think during the course of this season, he's got better and better. You could see, even with the goal against Arsenal, that was really.
Yeah.
That's something we've not seen from him for a couple of years, I don't think. I thought that was his best performance of the season last night. It is a shame he missed the pen because I wasn't happy with him at all at that moment. Yeah. When we'd huffed and puffed like that, and for him to miss that penalty, I thought, "Oh, fuck off, Mo." I was one of those never wanting to see him take a penalty again. But by the end, I was more than happy for him to take them all forever and ever. I think he is getting better and better. It's interesting how. There are things he knows he can't pull off anymore. He hasn't got quite the speed on his left to lean in and get at that movement and bend it on his left anymore. He does try it occasionally, and I would like to see it come off once or twice more. But he now realises he has the outside of the left cross thing going on. He's gone from doing it like a couple of times a season, if you go back in the past, to now doing it 3 times every game, and every time it works.
What he does from them positions where he used to curl it in the far corner, like Roma and Everton, he passes it now to the near post, doesn't he? Almost like he opens out and plays it through someone's legs to the front. I mean, there was a great one for, was it Darwin? Where Darwin came in and in the first half of the Cop end, and you thought, what a ball. Yeah. But he's just got that. And I think that is the difference between, occasional greatness and consistent greatness, is that getting on to the fact that, you know, I'm gonna have to change. I can't just do the same thing for unless you are Messi or whoever. You can't just do the same thing for.
I mean,
for
Messi
5,
changed
6
as
years.
well. Messi,
Yeah.
and I think there's something in it, Josh, where I watch him now, and when he carries the ball in a certain way, he's happy. He wants the defender to commit, don't get me wrong, but what he's also looking to do is make the defender go, hang on, I need to give him a yard of space here, because if I commit, he'll be past me and he will still be away. He's still got the ability to get away, but what he actually does is he makes the defender take almost a backward step, and then suddenly he's got the full range of options to anything he could want to do on the pitch. And that, for me, is part of his brilliance now, is that he's using his ability to create space to then create in a really, really strong way.
Yeah, it feels like he's still Liverpool's clutch player, basically, and he has been that for 6 years now. I think when we kind of need that moment, he's that guy, and I'm not sure Arsenal have that at the minute. I think that's one of the reasons why they're struggling a little bit in some of these tight games. And I think in the first half against Newcastle, I actually think that's up there with Salah's worst halves, like in a while, to be fair. But then he looks at himself in the mirror at half time, comes out second half, and what is it, like 2 assists and a goal he ends up getting,
and a pre-assist.
Yeah, I think he's just the ultimate attacker. He's the opposite of one-dimensional. I think if he gets restricted in terms of running in behind, he's a massive threat when he's facing the block, and he can open it up. I think his passing ability is really underrated. His ability to just see things and create chances. I thought he was really direct in terms of just going right at Dan Burn, going right at his man and getting into the penalty box. He wasn't always successful in beating him, but that kind of relentless belief that you're just going to beat your man despite losing a few, a bit like what I was saying earlier with Szoboszlai in comparison to Gravenberch, just the ultimate self-belief. He seems to demand so much from himself, and yeah, I think the best word for him is probably what you just said, Neil, in terms of he's just a joke, and he's difficult to define anymore, to be honest.
Reminds me of different, but John Barnes and Giggs, they remind me of that in the sense of what they were and what they became. And I remember I've seen John Barnes speaking about the way he played, and he said even as a winger, he said, I was never a knock it and go. I was a balanced shift, move them from side to side. He said, because my thought was always, I wasn't trying to beat the man, I actually wanted to play a pass. He said, but if you put them off balance, the pass opens up. And I think Salah's got that down to a T at the moment where you could probably argue if you're a fullback, he doesn't really go past me on the outside, you know, like, so I don't really need, but he makes you think he's going to. And if he does it once or twice in the game, then you sort of worry about it. And if you do that, then he's got the pass as well, or he's got the outside of the foot. I mean, he probably doesn't score as many of those spectacular ones anymore, but you've still got it in your mind that he might do it every so often. And you know, he scored a pretty spectacular one against Arsenal. So he is just. It's that he is like the sort of criminal that's like one step ahead of the police, isn't he? He's just like, you know, I'm always, you're looking down that road, but I've already got off, I'm on the roof, you know, like it's that kind of sort of thing of you can't get him cornered really as a defender. And fair play to him to be doing it for 6 years in the hardest league that you can do it in, and in a team as well. It's, you know, it's had its ups and downs where there's been seasons where he'd have had every excuse to say I didn't get double figures this season. You know, we were struggling. He just keeps on doing it. 20, that's 20 in the Premier League, isn't it? Goal involvements. Yeah, for 6 successive seasons.
Something like that. Yeah, I feel like he's enjoying this mantle as well at the minute of being. I think if you look at Liverpool's attackers, obviously lots of quality in there. He's the one kind of polished gem. I think all of the others, they've obviously got massive potential, really high ceilings and that, but Salah's the one who knows he's the finished product. He's the one who, you know, I think everyone will be looking to if Liverpool need a moment, hence this clutch player thing. So yeah, he's just such an unbelievable player, really, and probably the best sign of the club here, to be honest.
There is, of the other two, of the four slightly unpolished diamonds, I thought Rob, Nunez and Diaz were both great without a goal. I think that both of them, I mean, Nunez just torment those centre-halves. They cannot do any other defender. They're just constantly concerned about him all the way through the game. And I thought it was Diaz's best performance of the season.
Yeah, it was Diaz's best performance of the season. He was electric. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. He's quietly pre-involved, isn't it, in 2 or 3 of the goals. He has a nice finish, goal chalked off. Darwin, it's almost every performance you're going. I turned to Julio next to me and I said, that's what in Old Money they used to call a curate's egg of a performance. And we said, whatever a curate's egg is, that was what it was of a performance. Yet again. You know, we almost have to stop getting interested in the goal return. I mean, But the number of efforts he has on goal, again, watching the highlights back, I came away from the game thinking, yeah, he missed that one in the first half and he had a header second half. It's not just that. There's another one very close in on the edge of the 6-yard box he probably should do better with. There's a good shot in the right-hand channel second half. The header's really, really good header, by the way. So I think he has 5 efforts.
8.
Is it 8 efforts?
8 shots.
8, yeah.
I mean,
8 shots.
to me, something has to give there. You know, I know we've been saying this, and we may have to say it for another half a season before it does. I mean, I don't know exactly what the time scale was, but Lewandowski under Klopp took a good while to become Lewandowski.
The player I keep coming back to.
Aubameyang?
The player I keep coming back to is Drogba. Drogba occupied the life out of people, but the goal return's dead interesting. So in all comps, I'll do you this all comps every year at Chelsea: 04, 05, 16, 05, 06, where, by the way, they won 20 of the first 22, 16. Year after, 33. Year after, 15. Year after, 14. Year after, 37. Year after, 13. Year after, 13. And that would not surprise me if Nunez's numbers throughout his Liverpool career go like that, where there's a couple of years where you can't keep him out the action and he just keeps putting them in the back of the net, and there's a couple of years where you spend the whole season thinking, my God, what a player he'd be if he just finished a couple more. But what Drogba does in all of those years is he's amongst the hardest players to play against, Rob. And I think that's what I'm seeing. I am seeing the striker who defenders want to play against the least. And Newcastle are scared of Nunez. He battered them at St James's Park 2 years on the bounce. Now, as it is, he's good against them, I think, at Anfield as well last season. And he's done that again to them. I think it's dead interesting because we are going to drive ourselves mad with the, my God, wouldn't it be great if there was a goal? But I remember everyone used to have a big in the bonnet about Drogba, whether or not he was scoring enough, and then every couple of years he put in, or from nowhere he'd bang a hat-trick or something like that.
Yeah, in certain senses, the reason I think those of us who really like him are staying with him, in certain senses he's almost the perfect centre-forward, except he hasn't got the goal return. He's almost like AI generated. He's a rare mix of incredible power, height, pace. His technique is actually decent. I mean, it's just when he gets in his own head, he'll miscontrol something. But that's the same with his finishing is sensational of an elite level until he gets in his head and misses an easy chance. That's why you know something has to be coming with him. As he was coming off and Jota was coming on a couple around, we were going, well, now we've got a guy who can put the ball in the net. That'll be better. I mean, yeah, it's always a good thing to see Diogo Jota coming on. But can he make the things happen that Nunez can? Can he impact, occupy an entire defence the way Nunez can? It made me worried about what would happen. Obviously, that was an ill-founded worry. It all worked out for the best. But initially, in the first phase, you got Newcastle are much more comfortable here against a Gakpo and a Jota than they were against a Diaz and a Nunez.
Yeah. It's interesting because it would never be compared to him other than they wear the same shirt. But Firmino, he probably will end up with roughly what a Firmino season ends up as. I think a 15 last season. That's probably around Firmino's average. I imagine he had one season, didn't he, when he got 27, 28. So he'll end up around the same. We never really worried about Firmino, we need 10 more goals from him because of what he did differently around everything else. Maybe sometimes it's the case that you don't have an extra player like Mane, that you win 1-0 and Mane or Salah will score. You're sort of still a little bit, if Nunez doesn't take those easy chances, you're a little bit more reliant on Salah. And of course, obviously, he's now gone. But I don't know. You have your wavering where you watch him a couple of times and you think, just get on side, please. But really, I don't have too much concern about Nunez. I think Carragher had it right in his pre-match. He said that Liverpool's attack is Nunez, Salah +1. Absolutely, and I think it needs to remain that for the remainder of the season. Yeah,
I agree. I think he's an absolute menace. I love watching him. I think I'm starting to just kind of ignore the finishing part because that just feels like the coin flip at the end almost. Like it's almost out of his control at this point. Like I actually felt the finishing was half decent from him against Newcastle. He hits the target with 5 out of his 8 efforts, which was decent. So I thought the volley, which was a difficult chance, to get that on target, I thought he did well. I think the one where he makes the chance himself by chasing the defender in Luis Suarez style, I thought that's a...
It was Torres and Vidic, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. But I think Dubravka just makes a decent save there, to be honest. I think a lot of the time, they just trickle in, they just go in. But it's one of them where he's flipping a coin and it's just hitting tails every time, and it's going to get to a point where he hits heads a few times. And the overwhelming narrative will be he's learned how to score, when in reality he's just got a bit more lucky. I don't think he's a great finisher, but he's on top of that, at the minute, he's also just really unlucky as well. But the big thing with him is even when he doesn't score, he's such a menace and you know he's in the game. Like, there's certain strikers out there over the years who, if they don't score, they are anonymous. I think Sturridge comes to mind, to be honest. Late Sturridge under Rodgers was one of them who, because he was so prone to getting injured, it was just all about finishing the move. And if he didn't finish the move, he was like playing with 10 men almost. Nunez is he's so in the game. Everything he does is so, has such an impact on within the context of winning a football match. Whereas if you play Gakpo does a lot more and like in the game in terms of like dropping deeper and stuff like that. But within the context of winning, he's almost doing a lot more that almost doesn't matter, if you know what I mean. Nunez is just such a busy player. I think it's a matter of time before he explodes. I feel like I keep saying it. I've been saying it for like a year now, to be honest. But it is coming, I think. And I think even if it doesn't come, he's still a nightmare to defend against around that.
And that's a key part of it. But what he also does, he softens them up. And Gakpo and Jota are beneficiaries of it, Rob. I thought Jota in particular, his movement, I thought was exceptional yet again. He just looks like a shark. You know what I mean? He's absolutely all business.
Yeah, he was great, wasn't he? I do think, to be fair to the two lads come off, if it had been the other way round, Newcastle were wrought by the time those two came on.
That's fair.
And also they were having to come out as well. You know, we were able to play in transition, and it was that's when it became truly a joy to watch. But Jota is in. It was a massive. I think we may come to see it as a massive thing for our season. That Jota's almost his second touch after his lengthy-ish injury is to come on and score against. Who does he score against last time? Burnley. Yeah, we may come to see that because I think it's put him in a vein already, and you can see we've seen Jota has been a streaky player, I think, throughout his career in the way he scores. I mean, he had a calendar year without a goal, didn't he? 18 months ago. But either side of that are some phenomenal runs, and I think he's almost, he was, certainly before Newcastle, our best goal per minute player this season. I mean, it's just a ridiculous option to have. And like all of them, they all have their superpower, don't they? There isn't another Jota in our squad. There isn't another Nunez in our squad. There isn't another Gakpo, Diaz. They are all a different type of forward. And I think but the strength of the manager is finding a way to make all those diverse options dovetail at every junction. They always do, by the way.
Neil has raved about the City Centre's Curtis Jones, Josh. It is another phenomenal performance from him. And I am very much, and have been for a long period of time, for me, he's the fifth name on the team sheet. And I mean that as a massive compliment because we all know who the first four are. Anytime Curtis is fit, for any game that feels as though it's full of significance, I want to see him play. And I thought he was the absolute business yesterday.
He was, yeah. I think he's a real balancer for the team. I think that's the best way to describe him. A proper counterweight for the team in terms of just the squad's packed full of attack-minded defensive players, and I think he's a bit more. He's a bit of a glue guy. That's how I keep labelling him. A bit of a glue guy in the final third for us, and that never loses the ball. Really reliable when it comes to the initial first counter pressing and regaining the four. Klopp was quick to praise him yesterday. I think he's right to do that. I think he was brilliant. A couple of months ago, I actually said that I think if we had a proper six, I said that like he's kind of got just as much of a shout to start as McAllister, and I got a bit of a stick for it, but I think I stand by it. I think McAllister's brilliant. Don't get me wrong, but I think Curtis Jones is so important within the context of like what it means to be a team. I think he brings everything together a bit.
I think he makes Diaz a better player. I think he really helps Diaz more than anyone else. I think he's the one that Diaz has got the strongest relationship with. Yeah,
definitely. I said a couple of weeks back, didn't I, that I think when Gravenberg's on the ball, he almost seems to ignore completely what's going on to his left, Gravenberg, because of his tendency to go pen spot basically, or go diagonal with his passing and that, or his carrying. I think Jones is a bit more of a natural when it comes to linking with Diaz, just probing in the final third, establishing control, maybe drifting out wide at times and swapping positions with Diaz. But I think he's brilliant, and he's really coming into his own this year.
Yeah, I'm enjoying
last year.
I'm enjoying the fact that I think against a low block he's particularly effective when he's in the mood, because a packed defence is in front of him. He likes the forest of bodies. It's a challenge to him. He can move at them. He can drop his shoulder. I think it does help that he's he was a winger by trade until he became a first team player, and I think that is why it's working well with Diaz. He's not feeling the need to fly and hit the touchline, but but it's always an option. And you can see the swagger now in his play. That drop in the shoulder thing that brought about that really good goal against West Ham. There were hints of it yesterday. I think he's unlucky yesterday not to walk off the pitch with 2, maybe 3 goals, by the way. You know, that could have been another one where we came away going, that was the Curtis Jones show. And I mean, it very nearly was.
I think it's a great example of when you talk about coaching and development of players, that he's as good an example of that as anyone, because he's so different to what he was. You know, what got him into Liverpool's squad isn't what's got him into Liverpool's team. You know, he's got in the squad because he's got talent and he's got, you know, that real sort of swagger about him. But he's almost had to be reprogrammed into, right, you've got all that, but we need that for the occasional moments. We need this, and this. And I tell you, I wouldn't have thought he'd learn it. And I think with times during his time in the first team where you thought, I don't think he's going to get this. I think it's going to be too much for him. But he's got it, and he's learned about every side of midfield play.
Yeah, there was a point not too long ago where Gerrard was asked about him. I think he was maybe during his time with Aston Villa, and he described him as more of an individual.
It was by you guys, wasn't it?
Than Gerrard was. But I think now that's reversed for me. I think now Gerrard looks like more of an individual than Jones is now for me. Jones is more of a team player now for me than Gerrard was. Gerrard was a bit more, I'll do it myself, basically. And Jones is coming across to me now as a bit more of a, just, as I said, gluing everything together, being that kind of whatever the team needs him to be, a bit like Wijnaldum ended up being, almost.
And don't forget with Curtis, he was there for all of the success, but he was a little bit sort of over the fence. He wasn't on the bench for the League Cup final a couple of seasons ago. He must be looking now, thinking 2024. Okay, I could be starting finals, Europa League, whatever. I could be lifting the Premier League as a player that was involved in it. There's a Euros at the end of that, which if Gareth Southgate isn't looking at him, he really should be, because he's a glue player, is what England need in when they've got all these attackers, and it'll really make a difference. There's loads out there for him. There's a lot for him to sort of look at and go, okay, this is my time now.
Wataru Endo disappears off Rob. Said before about him picking the ball up. For me, that's what his positional play in the last month, I think, has been absolutely unreal. He's always where the ball's just about to drop. He's always where an opponent's just about to run. None of there's not the big moments. There's not goal line challenges. There's not, you know, saving tackles really, although he puts a couple of crunches in every single game. For me, it's more about he's got in his head now how this team plays and how he can best add to it.
Yeah, I mean, Klopp knew he was a decent player. We wouldn't have spent 20 million's not nothing on him if he wasn't a decent player. I think from his early cameos, we were all left a little bit, we're not sure here. We're not really sure of his level. His lower half of the Bundesliga, Premier League level, can we tell or can't we? But I think it's just with him, it's been a question of rhythm. It's being surrounded by better players. There's no doubt about that. I've been shocked about how he's able to express himself, really. I thought we'd be getting a poor man's Lucas at best, quite frankly. Just a very, very blunt kind of footballer who would do a job for us. And he's been more than that. I mean, I'm quietly happy. I'm always thrilled by observing players being able to get their shots away. I think it's a sign of confidence. It's a sign that they're genuinely contributing. And he has a wild one or two yesterday. They're not like the one he scores against. Who was it the other week? Fulham, yeah. But there's a lot going on in his game. That's been the really, really pleasant surprise. I think in a certain sense, it's the timing of him going away for this tournament. Obviously, it's not ideal. I'd rather have him as an option. But with McAllister coming back in, McAllister's 5-minute or 10-minute cameo was special, I thought, last night, by the way, and it included that incredible assist. McAllister would be getting the next 2 or 3 games, I think, and Endo might find himself benched, notwithstanding he might get half an hour here or there. And that might have set him back a bit. It might not be the worst thing in the world that he's got. He can go away on this massive high now to the Asia Cup, be the main man for Japan or thereabouts, and then maybe come back at the business end of the season where we're playing twice a week again, and he will see as much action. I feel he'll feel his Liverpool, as long as he doesn't get injury, his Liverpool season has been unbroken from when he broke into the side a month ago to the period when he comes back in.
And he could win it as well. You know, he could come back, captain of Japan, having lifted the trophy, and you know that no telling. He's had a bit of a wild personal sort of 6 months, hasn't he? But he must feel at the moment like all his Christmases have come, you know, and it's like, oh, I'm absolutely flying here. And you know, if he can continue that ride, that wave, they've got a very good chance of winning the tournament, and then come back with this sort of, you know, extra spring in his step. That could be huge for him. We saw it with Mane a couple of seasons ago, didn't we? Where he was actually the opposite. He probably had a difficult spell. Went away, won the AFCON with Senegal, and came back like a new man, didn't he? So yeah, I think you can't. I can't speak highly enough of Endo, actually, the way he's done it, and just the speed in which he's playing with now. That's the biggest thing. He just looks up to speed.
To me, the striking thing, we've raved about the quality of this attacking performance, Josh, and there he is. He's the fulcrum of the midfield as it moves around the pitch. You know, we've said it's amongst the best attacking performances you've seen from a Klopp Liverpool side, and Wataru Endo is part of that. And for me, that's the journey he's been on, that he is able to contribute in all those phases absolutely brilliantly. He's not coming in to firefight. He's not coming in to do bits. He's coming in to be part of running football matches.
I think the positioning line for me is the key element. I think when he first started for Liverpool and he plays the first few games and that, and he looked slow. I think that's the best way to describe how he looked in the first few games. He looked just off the pace. And that was the main worry when we signed him, because his physical data over the past 3 seasons has dropped off massively. He was always going to be a little bit slower than the rest of the players around him, and this was the Premier League as well, most intense league in the world. So I think it goes back to that coaching thing that Neil mentioned earlier, in terms of just getting him up to grips in a coaching sense with his positioning has allowed him to, despite being obviously the same speed as he was at the start of the season, he's now making these challenges. He's just arriving half a second earlier. And what I love about him as well, and this should just go without saying with any player really, but when he sees a challenge, he is just 100% in the challenge, mate. Like mouth guard and everything. You know, it's fully committed. Like I will, and I don't think that's the case with every player. I think he's fully in there, and it does remind me at times of peak Fabinho, to be fair, because Fabinho wasn't the quickest. His timing and his positioning was just absolutely on it. And when the ball was there to be won, when the ball was a little bit loose, it was just proper foot in and someone would recover it. So he's proper stepped up in the past couple of weeks, and it's a shame to be without him now for the next month or so, but it's also decent timing with McAllister, because it might have got to a point where McAllister is ready to start and Endo's just keeping him out the team, and I don't think a World Cup would have expected that, really.
It's nice to do one of these and not have to talk about, I thought Ibu Konate was brilliant, by the way, but not have to talk about the excellence of Van Dijk, who I thought was tremendous as well. Not to do the goalkeeper. Their goalkeeper was better than ours. That's a good thing, not a bad thing at times. Their goalkeeper was better than ours. He was more involved. And even Trent Alexander-Arnold, who I thought also had an excellent game. Every Liverpool player had an excellent game. All of them. It's good to get to talk about other people, because we've talked about all of them so much. I've talked about the coaching, Neil. That's as well as anyone's played this season. Anyone. That you got to see there from Liverpool. It's as well as any side's played. For me, again, the coaching should be raved about. There were times last season where we didn't look very well coached, to be honest with you. It didn't look like whatever was going on off the pitch was being put into practice as you'd want, and there's obviously circumstances around that, but it was frustrating to feel like a Liverpool side wasn't being as well coached as their opponents from time to time. That was happening. What I find odd in the immediate aftermath of the game is why anyone's talking about anything else. There seems to be a desire to find controversy where there's no need for any. The better side, the better home team by a mile won the game and played great football. There's no need for nonsense. It feels to me, I'd rather people talk about the excellence of and how this has happened and everyone behind it than the need for nonsense.
Yeah, but it doesn't lend itself to bite-sized content, does it? Talking about, hard work on the training ground and probably a mischaracterisation of Liverpool's manager as being this kind of fella who just throws emotions at the wall and
just hooks people
and sees who fancies coming along for the ride. He's obviously he's obviously an incredible coach, isn't he? His teams more often than not are brilliant. Whether it's Mainz, Dortmund or Liverpool, they're more often than not brilliant. He doesn't do it with the obvious players. He doesn't do it with and this isn't the Guardiola sort of shade. He doesn't do it with, well, yeah, of course you've got Messi playing well. Good on you, well done. But he does it with players that you think we all have doubts about them. I think almost every player that Liverpool have had and got, someone will have written a tweet or we might have talked about on a show and said, I'm not sure about him. I don't think I'd have signed him. McAllister, Endo, Gakpo, Diaz, Salah, Tsimikas, whoever. But Klopp has that ability to not only convince them to do the hard yards and to do all the other stuff, but to know how Liverpool play and what you have to do. And the shape of the team and the off the ball requirements, the positional play. He is an elite coach, and he's got an elite coach alongside him as well. I know he got some stick last season because things went wrong, but clearly Pep Linders is an unbelievable coach as well, and gets players to understand tactics like few other coaches do. And we can talk about the superstars on the pitch, but they've got a few off it as well, Liverpool.
Yeah, amen to that. Yeah, Klopp was interesting, I thought, in a press conference the other day. Maybe it was after Burnley. People go, it's coming together this season. Are the players understanding what you wanted? Really, there's no different. I mean, I know we're criticising him for last season, but we're criticising because the outcomes are what they are. Let's be honest about it. He said, no, we recognised the problems last season, and we were constantly working on them and trying to put them right. I think it's just another simple example of how Rome wasn't built in a day, and sometimes the repetition in training and trying to get the message in, and obviously the tweaks in the transfer market are massive, and putting younger legs in place of older legs is something he didn't have at his disposal last season. It was that work in progress. That's when people say transition season, they don't really allow for the fact that you can do badly in a transition season, and I actually think Liverpool aren't that bad last season, certainly in the second 40% of it, the record is really quite solid. The progress happened last season.
Well, all as well, it's a chicken and the egg thing, isn't it? But it's all about Liverpool just seem to get the right characters, don't do when they buy them. But there must be an element of they don't. They do, but they also turn them into the right characters as well.
Yeah.
Because you just look, and I watch Manchester United a great comparison at the moment. At spin at the moment, but you see United players do things, and you just think, I don't think I've ever seen a Liverpool player do it under Klopp. You see a United player, just stop running, or throw his arms up, or sort of kick the advertising hoardings and spend the next 2 minutes sort of moaning that they've missed a chance. You just don't see it. Whether you don't notice it, possibly, but I don't see it, and I just think there are certain things that just won't wash at Liverpool, even in the bad times. They just won't wash. And that's got to come down to the manager as well as the recruitment staff. I
think Nunez is instructive. Last season, Klopp famously makes that sort of sly dig about, you want to be in this Liverpool, your ticket to this team is you've got to press a certain way. And you can look at a player like Nunez, have we bought one who's not a natural presser? Now, if you'd only watched him this season, you go, well, he's obviously a player who's always done that all his life. I think Curtis Jones, if you'd watched, we've referenced to young Curtis Jones. There is that culture that the pressing is the technical exposition of the culture, but it requires talking to them about what being a winner is, and telling them to look at the examples. And you're right. You wonder, would a Bruno Fernandes, who I really dislike as a footballer, and quite frankly the way he comes across as a character, but would he be that player in a Klopp squad? I don't think
he wouldn't. Would he? There's a lot of players that you look at and you think, they're not Liverpool players, and I actually just think they would be. They just don't play for Liverpool, they haven't had the Klopp treatment.
I couldn't agree more. I think Nunez is a good shout actually, in terms of I think if Nunez signed for Man United that summer, which was they were supposedly interested at the time, I think by now he'd have been absolutely written off. I don't think he'd be getting the chances that he's getting at Liverpool now, the opportunities, the patience. I think Endo's similar. I don't think Man United. I think immediately they would have written him off, and he would have said he's not good enough, he's too slow.
Sulky or something. Nunez would be seen as a sulker by now. You can just picture exactly how it would have gone. In a strop.
And if you go to I always go back to Timo Werner as well. I think Timo Werner at Chelsea just didn't work for him, and people put that down to he's just not that good or whatever. But I'm convinced if he came to Liverpool,
couldn't agree more.
When Jota came, he'd be there now still, probably a regular starter, 20 plus every season. It's because they haven't got Klopp. I think that's a lot of it.
It is. It's incredible stuff.
Are you listening, boys, out there in Europe in this transfer?
Come and join.
Yes.
Come and join and see how good you can be. Go from there. I'm not going to do the referee. He did me head in, but he also gave 2 penalties, so you've got to, swings and roundabouts. I'd like him to give more to the home team. He gave you 2 penalties. Yeah, but apart from that, but he was annoying, hugely annoying. I do think there is a bit of a problem with them trying to act as though they won't be swayed by Anfield. I think I don't know quite what we do about it, because my God, is Anfield desperate to sway them. So it feels as though the whole situation's got itself out of hand.
Do you think VAR has maybe changed that dynamic a bit with referees?
I think around penalties, yes. I think around the shit like not booking Joel Linton, no. So I think that's your problem. When there is not the intervention, there's not going to be the eye in the sky, I think they are still being exactly the same in terms of we will not be swayed by Anfield. I think Everton get it as well at Goodison, to be honest. I think there's something about we will not be swayed by a hugely partisan home crowd. We're going to stand firm. We're going to show our masculinity in terms of this refereeing. It drives me mad.
Well, as long as I've been watching Liverpool, I've come out of grounds with people going, that referee just wanted to show Anfield. That's why we put every decision against us. But yet every other manager in a press conference goes, well, that's what you expect at Anfield. You never get anything, as though the refs are predominantly homers. But I do wonder, in the era of VAR, whether a ref is subconsciously a little bit more wired to go against Anfield, because he goes, whatever happens, I'm not coming out of this being shown up by the telly in VAR as a homer, even if I'm not even trying to be. So what I'm saying is there's a subconscious overcompensation potentially.
Possibly so. Whatever it is, I'd like it to stop. Before the match, I was in the pub saying, I tell you what, I think Taylor's the best of them at the minute.
It's a unique feat, isn't it, to give two questionable penalties or borderline penalties. The second one is, in my opinion, is not a penalty. The first one is, but I've seen both of those not given, and it would have been easy for them both not to be given. And I reckon possibly there was a chance that if they weren't given, they weren't overturned. To do that and to still come away with people going, oh my God, like people walking out of the ground saying to me, you better write about that corruption. They won 4-2 at two friends.
Played them off the park.
yeah, but that's a unique feat from a Premier League referee, I think, this season.
There was a lot going on. The bigger picture quickly, Roberto. The
Big picture, isn't it?
The top, the five clear of Arsenal and City. City obviously inevitably have the Manchester City game in hand. I don't know where they get them from. They must go to a shop. They always manage to have one somewhere in there as well. It's like I don't think anyone actually have the points up at the end of the season at times properly. But they do have one. City are now obviously the bigger threat. Villa are hanging in. I've done well through this show, really, to be honest with you. I've got it at 3. I love a league table with breaks in it. And now you've got a top 5, theoretically. But I think we know Villa and Tottenham are interlopers with the greatest respect to both, because I think both are impressing over the course of the season. Arsenal, there's a question mark against. You feel as though Liverpool and City are going to be there till the business end.
Well, Arsenal are this week's question mark, aren't they? 2 weeks ago, Tottenham with a question mark. Oh, Tottenham have gone, they're nobody's business, and then suddenly a couple of wins.
They're not our business.
No. Liverpool are the one side who you can say have shown consistency and haven't hit a spell. And it might well happen, but we've got 20 games without having a down spell. Tottenham have had it, Arsenal have now had it. Villa, I think, have shown a degree of consistency here, where I think to write them, it's really hard to see and imagine them winning the title. I think they're still 20-1, and you have to go, the bookies aren't soft, right? 20-1 is 4% or something like that. It's not going to happen. But equally, nor should write off that Villa could end up top 3 and within 8 points of the eventual champion. That's not. I wouldn't bet on that, but it's not impossible.
Not impossible. And certainly with the home form, that backs them up.
And Tottenham might not be miles off either. I think they're less likely than Villa. I think they're flakier. They've had their injuries as well. Arsenal, I think, again, as is typical, and I just wonder how many years people have to watch football to know that writing obituaries on the back of 2.5 bad games is a bit soft, really. Arsenal have fallen, but they've fallen from a big height. It only needs Liverpool and City to drop points in their very next 2 games and Arsenal to win a game, and suddenly we'll be scratching our heads and go, well, how did that happen?
They just don't look like they've got what Josh said before, the ability to twist. Maybe they'll buy someone in January. They just look to me to lack a bit of attacking quality.
I think Arsenal can't lose those games that they lost because they can't win. They have not shown that they can win the ones that they have to win, the 6-pointers in March and April. So I think Arsenal need to be in the lead in that period. Otherwise, I think they can't go to the Etihad and win in March, April. They couldn't go to Anfield. Obviously, they didn't go to Anfield and win. So when they lose to West Ham at home and Fulham, it's like a double hit on them, because it's like, oh God, that was the one. Like we needed to rifle at home. Whereas I think Liverpool, at the very least, when they go to the Emirates, they can avoid defeat. They can keep themselves in there, and they can beat the West Hams. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But I just think Arsenal, until they convince themselves that they can go and win at Old Trafford, wherever, Tottenham even, they just don't have that luxury of being able to say, you know what, we had a bad day there against Fulham, we lost that one. I think it matters to them more than it matters to maybe a Liverpool and a City.
I also think that the media, and its London centricity to it. No offence to the media, but there is a, I was looking at most people's. Even the bookies, they were looking at the player of the year. I had a little look. The betting for the footballer of the year. They're talking about football writers or whatever. The main player of the year award. Out the top 10, I think 5 were Arsenal players. In the betting. Now, the betting is just a commentary on the perception of those who are going to vote. So there's a desire to write Arsenal as the coming force, as this new super team, as their £240 million investment in the summer being smart money, Declan Rice being the final piece of the jigsaw. There's a desire for that narrative to work. And up to a point, it's worked for them. But when they lose their shit and lose stupid games like Fulham and the West Ham one back to back, that's when I think it counts against them. And suddenly it's a debacle, and it's how they're suddenly flakes and they're being written off almost. And I think it's how they psychologically deal with that.
I think there's something in, though, the idea of what happens when you lose in the way it underlines your own insecurities. So I think that's what's happened to Arsenal. Like, for instance, I think if Arsenal lost to West Ham 4-3 and then it got slap bang in a thriller with Fulham, and the last minute Fulham go up the other end and score from a set piece or on a counter attack, and that one finishes 4-3 or something like that, then I think they're able to say, but we shrugged that off. I think it's harder when you're going, I don't know if that front three's got enough goals in it, and guess what? It plays 180 minutes of football, and I would include Anfield. I think if they had more off the bench or better attacking options, I never thought they were scoring from open play at Anfield. I thought they were great, but they were never scoring from open play. They're
very close. I mean, you can write the story either way all season, but they're very close to getting only a point at Luton. And they're very close to losing at Anfield. Trent's thing a little. I know these are small margins, but I always say when things go, they're fine. Like you win a couple last minute. Well, you're lucky or you've shown a certain resilience. Well, it always depends on what happens next. And what happens next to Liverpool, despite some adversity and some late winners here or there, is Liverpool have got stronger and stronger. Arsenal have gone through those moments where the media have wanted to go, that's the sign of champions like at Luton. No, it wasn't. It was the sign of them getting lucky, really, quite frankly. The Declan Rice put his big head on something when they had a really quite poor performance. And they were a bit lucky, and they were lucky to survive the proverbial washing machine at Anfield as well. History is now possibly beginning to demonstrate.
I think the thing with Arsenal is that they're arguably better coached at the minute than Liverpool are, and seems to be further along the journey under Arteta. Klopp's dealing with a different, kind of a new squad at the minute, new team. But I think Arsenal just don't have the those individuals who will move the needle a little bit at both ends of the pitch.
The players are less good.
I think at both ends of the pitch, both boxes, they just don't have those elite difference makers who, even on an off day, will get you over the line and will just kind of, within the context of what it takes to win a game of football, they just have players who are just less impactful. Liverpool have got Alisson and Van Dijk at one end, and at the other end, Salah, and I would also throw Nunez in it. Even though his finishing's not great, he's a player who just moves your attacking level to a different level because of his ability to just create chances and get chances. It's crazy, Nunez, in terms of that sort of thing. Arsenal just have really good players, but nobody who's I think if you were to merge the Liverpool and the Arsenal squad as one, I think arguably the top 4 players would all be Liverpool players in terms of Alisson, Van Dijk, Salah and Trent. Yeah, and I think Arsenal have got a shout with Rice and Saka, Saliba. I think Jesus is really good, but I think the top 4 would be Liverpool players.
That's the truth of the matter, and you did the same thing with City. The top 4 would all be City players as well. Rodri, De Bruyne, Haaland.
And that was a good quote from Klopp yesterday, wasn't it?
Which one did he say?
He said, we're talking about the title race. He said, well, Kevin De Bruyne is warming up and the whole country's shaking.
The thing with the City thing,
over to you, Kev.
Kev.
With the City thing, though, one nice thing about, if you want to put a positive spin on it, one nice thing about City being the team to compete with is we actually have them at Anfield near the back end of the season. Arsenal have got to go away to the Emirates, so if there was a point in it at that point, I mean, that's quite soon, that actually, at the Emirates game. But with the second half of the season, matchup being at Anfield, rather than it feels like it's always at the Etihad.
It has.
This season, we've got a bit of a benefit with that.
It would be a huge, wouldn't it, if Liverpool if Liverpool already had it in their own hands going into that game and could sort of not kill it off, but put daylight between them, that would be huge. Because you remember a couple of seasons ago, they went there sort of knowing that even a draw, which was a really good result and a decent performance, probably wouldn't be enough. It does change the dynamic second half.
It's so exciting. It's so exciting. Subscribe to everything on the Anfield Wrap. It's good, for one. Also, keep an eye on what Josh is up to and subscribe to Neil's Substack as well. Things are the business. Things are motoring. What a time. What a time to be enjoying this Liverpool side. I've never enjoyed it more. Andy Heaton producing, Ash O'Rourke on the visuals. We've had Josh, we've had Rob, we've had Neil, and we've had the time of our lives.